Hello and welcome to Seeing Jesus with Paul Miller. I'm Liz Voberil, and I'm here with Paul and our colleague Adam Barker, who directs our Praying Life ministry. This podcast is produced by seeJesus, a global discipling mission with a goal of creating discipleship tools and training people in how to use them. We say that many organizations do important work helping the church to be the hands and feet of Jesus, but seeJesus works on the imagination and the heart. We want to help the church rediscover the beauty of Jesus and catch a vision to live as he lived. So we started a new mini-series in our last episode, just sort of looking together at discipling and some of our practice and experience of it in the last few years and what sort of popping or coming to the fore as important elements of that, both in what we do, but really in what the church does everywhere, like what makes for a really good, deep discipleship. And so that's where we're going to pick up our conversation again today. Adam, I'll have we ended our last episode really looking at how the Spirit, how much as we might want a detailed algorithm for exactly how to disciple, how the Spirit is actually central to that process. So do you want to restate some of what you said last time?
Yeah, sure. I'm always bad at restating, but
it's complicated. Tall order.
There you go. So yeah, we were just fun looking at some of the methods, that we tend to do in discipleship, but getting behind that to what it's not. Again, the church wants methods. The church wants,
right.
Here are these 10 things, and so
I want methods.
Everybody, that's our. I mean, that's so much easier. But to look the why Paul did, what they observed. They were observing not Paul with great methods. They were observing, in that cohort, like, look, as you were following the leading of the Spirit, like those were things that he was up to as he was discipling them, and so. It shifts leadership. And so that's what I'm excited to talk about, that component of what that looks like and how we've grown in that, how we've observed that.
I do think it is one reason why Jesus as a person in the Gospels is understudied, because he has such a wide range of quote methods. And so there's rebuke, questions, short lectures, directed discussion, and
dinner party discipleship,
worship, dinner party discipleship, leaving space, like just the way he leaves space up, the way he'll invade space into people's lives, the way he'll lead space, the way he'll let people invade his life, or the way he'll invade their lives. Like it's really this. It's a symphony of different ways of loving people. And if you try to copy Jesus by doing those things, you'll miss the whole, because he is, go ahead, Adam.
Well, no, I was going to say, unpack that, because that's what our natural response is. And I've seen so many books and even discipleship resources that they don't say copy. I mean, they basically do. They say copy it, like be like him. Like, what do you mean if we copy it, we're going to miss it? Like that's worth unpacking.
That's true.
It's kind of like if you try to teach someone to love and you give them all the pieces of different things that they can love. If they don't love from the heart, that nothing, nothing will happen. If they don't lead to live a life of self-forgetting love, and I think a lot of Christians, the tendency in the church, and I've seen this for 50 years, I've been around a long time, maybe 40 years, is they dabble with, and you've probably heard me say that they'll dabble with different methods too. But that's why this goal, and Christ's goal of creating a community of God followers around him and his life and his teaching is what he's driving for. He's driving for perfection. And like that's why things like the Sermon on the Mount are really important. Because it's a sermon on the perfect Christian. And why would Jesus teach that is he really wants that to happen, and don't misunderstand me. This side of heaven, we, like Paul says it in Philippians 3, not that I have already attained, but Paul knows he will not be perfect this side of heaven. He knows you won't be but he's driving for it. He's driving for this beauty of Christ to be formed in people. And without that passion for change, then, and with the goal of the church looking like Jesus, then it just, discipleship just gets boring. And I think that's why churches quit it, because it's so boring. But if people are really changing, if they're really learning to love their wife or their husband in a difficult marriage, then they're on the front lines every day. And that person is just who really wants to follow Jesus, a sponge. So you're not, so compassion and understanding their world is a part of it, but calling them to the greatness of their love that's purified, so that they have a love that's honest and compassionate and prayerful, knowing that their spouse may never change. But that's a hothouse where the beauty of Jesus can be formed in them. Mm-hmm. And if they begin to get their hearts captured by that, then it's just amazing what God can do.
Yeah, that's part of the telos idea that I think we often talk about in the goal of discipleship, right? Like I my own experience of some of the things you've written and taught about, Paul, is that it really lifts the ceiling a lot higher in terms of what does it look like to grow and mature? Like if Jesus is really after that Sermon on the Mount kind of Christian, the perfect Christian, then there's so much more growing to do, right?
Right.
Like it's not, you're not just getting a basic baccalaureate diploma in Christianness and then moving on to
right.
be employed for his work,
right.
which is part
right.
of it all, right? But there's just a further on and further in. Paul, I want to go back to what you were saying about you can't just study the methods of Jesus and like copy. You'll miss the heart. It makes me think of what I know you did in your sabbatical when you were looking at Jesus. This is the story we tell in the first episode of this podcast, which is fairly far back in the history. But my short version of it, Paul, is that, you and Jill, life was really hard. And you began to pray, Lord, help me to love Jill. And then over time, that prayer changed to show me what love is. And then that led to this deep study of Jesus, where you're really grappling with that, show me what love is. And I think there's a way in which that's a different kind of way of looking at Jesus, right? Like that. And I feel like even in discipleship, there's a way in which your own kind of like, maybe I'm going to just call it really geeking out about the details of Jesus and what's he doing and how is he loving and why is he doing that? And that's different than like you went in a certain way that helps to communicate some of that level of the there's like multiple ways you could love in this situation, and so that there's a kind of a texture to that level that isn't often where we land in talking about imitating Jesus. It's often like, oh, just go. It sort of floats a lot higher than that. So I do think there's something in there that gets to an interesting texture of discipleship. That's there's just a lot to mine in that vein. But I see it as somewhat related. There's a kind of a deeper becoming like Jesus that's not so much just grab at these little attributes and like put stickers on, but that gets deeper into the wiring, like be rewired to live like Jesus in these ways.
Yeah. Let me just sort of reflect on that with you guys. The theme there is that here's just a quick story. This is a woman I discipled, 25 years ago, and her husband. And she had wanted to grow, a very talented woman, just a good writer. We actually swapped discipling for her mentoring me with writing. And I discovered, and she was caught in a pietist trap where you're seeking to know God more by trying to go know God more. And because pietism pietism is sort of the functional beating heart of evangelical Christianity, where there's a genuine love for Jesus, there's a love for Scripture, a desire for evangelism and missions. Those are kind of key points. And I would also say obeying, doing the right thing would be another big theme on that. And purity of doctrine, too. I'm trying to think, maybe those are 6 or 7 highlights of pietism. But it doesn't really have a paradigm for love. And a joke in Africa is that half the churches were started by church splits fights between missionaries. And, it is in the work of love where we get to know Christ in deeper ways. And I told this woman, I discovered her husband was she was really angry at him. He was doing all the kid raising, all the cooking, shopping, and laundry. And so I challenged her to do the laundry. And my little slogan for her was, Jesus is at the bottom of the laundry basket. You are not going to find closeness with Christ in the abstract. You're going to find it in the activity of it, participate in the death of Christ by doing that laundry. So when you get to the bottom of the laundry basket, you'll find Jesus. And so I want people to grab their laundry baskets and start washing, whatever it is.
Yep.
So if I can get them engaged on that work, it's just it's all through. Here's just John 14 verse 15 in Jesus' high priestly discourse. This is Thursday night, right after or during the Last Supper. If you love me, you will keep my commandments, and I will ask the Father, and he will give you another helper to be with you forever. So it's that we're so used to, faith is already assumed here by Jesus. So he's not creating a works legalism. He's saying, you are a believer. These disciples are all believers. That in the obedient life of love, that's where the filling of the Spirit comes. John 14:21. Whoever has my commandments and keeps them, he is it that loves me. He who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I will love him and manifest myself to him. And notice the order. Again, there's this foundation of faith already in place, but you never hear people talk about this really massive structure of New Testament theology. So it's in the work of love. And when I'm teaching people to pray, I'm teaching them to love. And if they don't understand that, their praying life will become self-centered, and I'm teaching them to enter Christ. That's the second thing. And if they don't see that to be a follower of Jesus, to enter the dying and rising of Christ, they will be so confused by what God does when they begin to pray. Because God will almost, in a praying life, you almost begin to experience the fire of the Spirit. Fire, bringing to light things in your own heart, bringing suffering into your life. And so the entering, and it's a beautiful cleansing fire. But if you try to add prayer to that, to a system that is still functioning like a sofa saint, nothing will happen. Or you'll just bag it.
I share a story in the Praying Life seminar about how love and prayer it fuels one another. And there's a guy, he used to be one of my leaders, and you have to kind of picture him, big burly football player, almost went professional football, just a big, strong, bearded guy. And we were meeting one day talking about just being attentive to his wife and just loving his wife. And he told me, he says, I'm growing in that. When we sit and watch TV and she starts talking, he says, I pause the TV and I make eye contact and I'm listening. And I was like, good job, man. And he says, but honestly, I really don't care about what she's talking about. And he was right. He was always the same kid who's causing trouble in preschool kind of deal. He says every time it's about that little kid. And so I had him make a prayer card, and I said, just spend this week just praying, God, what do you want me praying for my wife?
Yeah.
And he did. And he began to pray some very specific things. And the next time we met, it was really fun. I was like, man, how's that going? He said, well, we'll sit on the couch. We're watching TV. She starts talking. I pause. I make eye contact. And then he said, and then something really weird happened. He said, I actually started to care about what she was talking about.
That's awesome.
I was like, what happened? What happened in you? And he said, the more I prayed for her, the more I started to love her and started caring about the things that mattered to her. And
that story, you keep, I just have to quit this. I mean, it's a perfect description of Paul's amazing prayer in Ephesians 3:14-21.
Mm-hmm.
It's something I started to pray and something weird happened and I started to care. That was the Spirit prayer. The Father gifted him by his faithfulness in prayer to begin to open up his heart to love. That was the Spirit. Jesus came into his heart.
Yeah,
I mean, the whole Trinity was working.
Yeah.
It was absolutely, I mean, it's just like that, people look at that prayer. There was a conference lately where someone said, well, that's prayer so highly exalted. It's just one of those immensely practical things you can ever do is ask the Father for the gift of the Spirit in order to love outside your categories. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I haven't connected until now, just this conversation about discipleship. And this is new for me. So I love charts, but the Y chart is kind of a new one for me. And so what we're talking about, the beauty of faith and love, and I wish listeners could see this, but that downward part of a Y, and then the Y about different ways. You were talking about how Jesus loved in different ways, sometimes with honesty, and there's different ways. But that middle piece with prayer and dependence at the little juncture of the Y,
yeah,
that's this key that seems to be interwoven of that kind of dependence. Like, what is how do I love at this moment? How do I pursue at this moment? And so that key piece of, it's not just prayer, but of complete dependence. And I don't know how to do this without you. That can happen in discipleship. That's what changes. That's the different routes we go.
Yep. Yeah. I was in a conversation with someone the other day, who's been a reader of A Praying Life. He was telling me he's reading it again for the umpteenth time. And we were talking, I said to him something along the lines of, I heard the other day, someone was saying, what is it that makes Paul's books kind of unique? And they were kind of mulling, and he said his favorite chapter in the whole book is the one that gets at the will and Jesus closing all these doors in the Lord's Prayer, except for prayer, right? So it's that picture of a surrendered will. And I just think that there's some that I guess our will really is where the love of God connects in the real world with how we live, how we engage. And if our discipleship only flies through the brain and doesn't come down into the will, if we don't learn how to submit our wills to the Spirit and let Him lead us, then it's it might just be a nice feeling experience where we have a lot of resonance with good truth, but don't actually that conduit that we're meant to be, or we're pretty weak at becoming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's a big part.
I've been comparing this to I used to work with small group leaders, and I'd use this to kind of help them in the conversation with small groups of, it's like we're on a hike, and you've been on the hike before. And so, we want to get to, the waterfall and the bridge. Like those are two places we want to get to, but don't have 10 places you want to get, because we want to kind of see what happens along the journey. Like, look at that. We didn't look under this rock. And so, creating space for that. And I still like that picture, but I think something that's changed in me at that why point is I'm not the one leading on the trail. And how the Spirit knows what rock needs to be overturned, or, maybe there's a whole nother path I didn't even see that still leads to that waterfall, the truth we're talking about. But there's more surprise and just, when he's leading those things in those conversations. Our will, we're like, okay, we're surrendering will, even as we're trying to lead. Does that make sense?
Yeah. It's like a dependent discipler, right? Which is,
as we're trying to teach them to do that, we're doing it also.
Yeah. I think that's well stated. One other lens to look through this whole process is goes back to Plato, his triad, which has endured 2,500 years of scholarly reflection of the three things that characterize every person, every object, even the triad is the true, the good, and the beautiful. So if you look at a chair, the true would be the weight, the kind of wood it is, the dimensions of the chair. The good would be how it gets at the angle of the good. What purpose is it? The function of the chair, and then the beautiful is what does this thing look like? What again, the design. That's probably a crude way of describing it, but in the process of discipling, we've almost looked at the discipling as a process of memorizing the true. And maybe better discipling would be obedient to the good. But so the true has been partly because there have been so many attacks on orthodoxy from liberalism. The evangelical church has been rightly cautious about that. So there's been this strong, we need to give them the true. But one thing that dawned on me a number of years ago is that our not overemphasis on the truth, but maybe better, but a neglecting of the good and the beautiful has weakened the true, because all three work best together. And so you're entering, what one of the things you're doing in this discipline is really working on the good, and then slowly letting them be able to see beauty formed in them and others, and enjoying that beauty, commenting on it, on the beauty of Christ that's emerging in that person. Like that was a beautiful story of the guy who was almost went to the NFL.
Started to care about what his wife was saying.
Yeah, I mean that's a beautiful story.
It is beautiful.
And he by the act of obedience, by pursuing the good, sitting on the true of the good, but particularly the good, an act of obedience of writing that prayer, of following through and praying, he encountered something bigger than him, and it was the work of the Spirit that he could not explain.
Yeah, just thinking about that true and good and beautiful. Lately, it's been fun. I had somebody ask me about new prayer cards were new for them, and so they were asking about like worship and adoration, and it was fun. I don't know that I directly connected this, but it's when I see people begin to learn to just wait and watch and learn just a childlike dependence. You see curiosity just bubble out. Like it begins to shift how they see everything. And so it leads naturally to seeing the beauty, like even just the sovereignty of God. It's been so fun watching people lately in cohorts or just, guys I'm talking with, like begin to go, oh my gosh, like like only God can connect those circumstances or people.
Yeah.
So it leads to recognizing what's true.
Yeah.
That's way beyond just what's in the head. Like they're connecting it to real life.
Yeah.
For sure.
Some of the comments is just a comments that people have had in these particular cohorts that we've been talking about. But I know, Adam, you'll have ones to add to that. But it's just what you said about curiosity made me think of that. So these are like, here's one person, I learned how to lament, to step into lament. So, the world of grief is not, I mean, there is wisdom in the world of psychology, but, it's just wonderful thing to have a biblical frame on that, so you don't get lost in your grief, or the opposite problem of not even being aware of that and sort of giving people permission to lament. I know, just sort of people constantly say how that widens their soul.
This is from a guy on a cohort that I don't just want to reflect on this lament, but just share the response of this lament. And he said I could share this anytime. And this was a gentleman, he and his wife, they foster kids. In fact, they live in a home where they foster kids. It's like a little community. And so when he shared this out loud with a group, he had written it. And when he shared it, there was, and I forget what chapter, maybe chapter 20, 21 in the praying church, the divine community, like something happened in the room where all of these, this was a group of men in a cohort, like there was weeping and we just jumped in and prayed with him. But just listen to his just real honest heart of how hard it is, not just for the kids in foster care and adoption, but even for their family. And so I don't know, maybe this is too long, but let me read it. Lord, where's the peace? Why are we constantly at each other's throats over very little things? Why is everyone so divided so much that we can't even listen? From the tiny children in my home constantly bickering with each other, never seeming to get along, to me never being able to respond properly when they fight. Not to mention outside the home and online. Everything seems to be a fight. From the simple, it's time for dinner, to get in the car, everything seems to be a struggle. Please, please, please restore peace and love and let us respond to each other with kindness. Let there be rest and remove the night terrors that plague our home. Let us all respond with love and grace to each other. Help heal the trauma of the past in all of our hearts. Help to break the addictions of electronics and anything else that may be standing in the way of connection. Help us all to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to anger. I give this all to you, Lord, that you may bring peace and rest and love to our home and help us spread that throughout our community and in the world. In Christ's name I pray. Amen.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. He makes all things new. Adam, what do you think makes lament so powerful for people, learning to lament?
I think it's so foreign for people. Like it's not, it feels wrong.
Right.
And so just that much honesty, just directed towards God. People are used to complaining, which is, some of the same thoughts, but not bringing it to God.
Yeah.
It's freeing. Like I've seen guys just literally say, I feel so free after just being that honest with God. And it's just beautiful to see. Again, it's not some, here's step 7. It's you see the work of the Spirit in their heart, drawing things out they don't even know that they have, and just helping them release and circle back to faith and trust God. So it's just a beautiful moment of seeing the Spirit at work. We can't make that happen. Even in a good cohort, we can't do that work that was done in my friend.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah. Makes me think about, we talk sometimes about load-bearing walls or things like that. I feel like part of the goodness of lament is it's putting the weight on the one who can bear it, actually. I feel like in our complaining lives or our going to there's a lot of weight kind of rolling around that gets thrown on the system or the problem or the random they who did it, whoever, but really that weight can only be borne in one place. And that's part of what I suspect produces the freedom, is that it's the one who can actually bear that weight. All right. Well, speaking of weight, I think you'll have to wait another couple of weeks for the conversation to continue. Thank you for listening and being under this weight of discipleship, thinking on it with us.